You're watching the ANEC Sports Podcast on YouTube. The show starts right now.
Good evening and welcome to episode 19 of the ANEC Sports Podcast. My name is Sam Frick, the founder and editor at Around Northeast Corner, covering 30 schools across Northeast Indiana and parts of Elkhart County. That includes the NECC, the ACAC, and the Northeast 8. This is our first episode of the 2025 calendar year, and we got plenty of content to share with you, including including wrestling and some basketball along the way. But to kick things off, I want to first mention the girls wrestling sectional that took place on Friday. The inaugural IHSAA sectional tournaments across the state of Indiana took place on Friday morning, and I believe we had 3 sectionals, I believe, that took place on Friday. But let's go ahead and kick things off with the sectional hosted by Goshen. And in this sectional, Garrett won their first ever sectional with 200 points. East Snowball took second with 167. Wawasee took third at 157.5. Lakeland fourth with 150. And then Prairie Heights, the only other team with points of over 100 with 106. Northwood just shy of reaching that mark. So looking at some of the notable performers that did well in that sectional, so now we're going to look into the individual performers, and we begin with the 105 class, and this was Emily Stram, the freshman from Lakeland, winning a sectional championship. And then you have, the 110 class, Christina Kummel of West Snowball, another freshman, taking home a sectional championship. And as we go down the list, at 115, you have Marissa Schneider of East Snowball, a junior, taking home a sectional championship. East Snowball had a good sectionals, I mentioned earlier. Lakeland did decently well, despite maybe not performing as well in the team sport, but still did well individually, no less. Another East Snowball girl, as you can see down here, won the 120-pound sectional bracket. Natalie Spidel, winning that sectional. 125, Christian Lewis of Prairie Heights won that sectional. And as we go down the list, 130, Nevaeh Wilson of Garrett dominating to stay not undefeated, but maintain a very strong season, going 34-1, winning that sectional championship. Wilson, a part of the sectional champion Garrett Railroaders. As I mentioned, Garrett, no matter what happens, the entire team is going to play regionals because of the fact they score well enough to advance as a team. But another East Snowball girl in the lane, Lines, a junior, also won a sectional in 145. 155, Rain Trineri, another dominant Garrett wrestler, winning a sectional championship in 155. And then you go down the list here, Goshen girl, 170. Ellie Clevenger of Central Noble, winning a sectional championship, the lone sectional champion from CN. And then lastly, Kaylin Graves of East Snowball, rounding out the Goshen sectional, winning that sectional championship. Shifting over to the Columbia City sectional, and this was a tight sectional no less, where New Haven held off a very strong Columbia City team to win their sectional championship with 203 points. Keep in mind, New Haven won the state championship last year, despite the fact girls wrestling was not sanctioned by the IHSAA. Columbia State took third at 197.5. Rochester took third at 140.5. Northside 123. Homestead 102. And then Carroll in sixth at 101.5. In terms of individual performers from the ANEC area, as we go down this list here, let's see here. The first one that we see, Isabel Ocampo of New Haven won her sectional championship at 115, as she remains undefeated on her sophomore season. A very strong year for her. In the 120-pound brackets, you have Alexis Spalding of Columbia City winning a sectional championship with only 2 losses on the season for her as a Columbia City wrestler in her senior year. 125-pound bracket, you had Faye Waithera. I apologize, I butchered that name. She won her sectional championship as a freshman. Congratulations to her. And then the 130-pound bracket, you have the freshman Ocampo, Lanessa Ocampo, winning a sectional championship. 8 losses on the season for the talented freshman out of New Haven. 135, that's a Homestead girl. Get down to 140, you have Aubrey Troutner of Huntington North, a sophomore, winning a sectional championship over Columbia City's Hannah Maggart, a senior for Columbia City. And there's a Southside girl that won the 145. New Haven's Olivia Bodie winning the sectional 155. Only 5 losses senior year. 170-pound brackets, a Rochester girl. 190, Michaela Clifford, only 2 losses on the season. She won a sectional championship in the 190-pound bracket, a dominant year for her as well. And then lastly, in the 235-pound brackets, which was the bracket that decided the team scoring of that sectional, that went to Glesia McGee of New Haven, 12-8, the freshman winning that sectional, a critical sectional that allowed the New Haven Bulldogs to get over the hump and winning that sectional championship. And lastly, we take a look at Muncie Central, which only Jay County is the only school in this sectional to represent our area. And Jay County cruised to a sectional championship, their very first one, as Jay County had 232 points. HSC took second with 147, New Pallet with 143, Blackford coming in fourth with 96, and Westdale in fifth with 94 points. As I mentioned, Jay County is going to have a strong showing in the regional, as Jay County obviously won the sectional as a team, so everybody advances. But Caitlin Rolls, the junior, only 4 losses in the season. She won a sectional championship at the 100. Scrolling down here, we got a Daleville girl in 105. We have Tatiana Willis, a 22-win senior from Jay County. She won the sectional in 110. Again, you're going to hear this a lot with Jay County because this was a dominant performance from the Patriots. Sophomore from Eastbrook won the 115. At 120, you have another Jay County girl listed here in Brenna Rubel, a freshman for the Patriots. She won the 120-pound sectional bracket. 125 went to I want to make sure I got that right. A Hagerstown girl named Abigail Gilbert, a sophomore, very talented sectional, no less. A lot of sophomores with a lot of potential. Another one in 130 from New Pal. I'm trying to scroll through here as quickly as I can here. And then you got a senior from Jay County and Lena Lingo, a 24-win wrestler. She won the 135 sectional. And then going down to 140, 145. A girl from Blackford won that sectional. They have a girl from Westdale, another sophomore winning a sectional. So this was a very sophomore dominant sectional, no less, for this group of competitors. And then you have another Jay County participant winning a sectional, the undefeated Mallory Winner, the senior winning a sectional championship. I went with Caitlin Rolls as a nominee for Former of the Week. We don't talk enough about some of these other Jay County girls, and as good as Winner is, we've nominated her quite a bit this year. So Caitlin Rolls, why not? She's had a great year. And then 190, another Jay County girl winning that sectional. That's a freshman, and Amara Crawford, 31 wins on the season. She also a sectional champion. And then lastly, in 235, a HSE girl, Infanta Saul, a 16-win grappler, winning that sectional as well. So as you can see here, lots of sectional champions performing well to get to this point. So as they stand right now, there are 2 regionals notably competing in the regionals, which, by the way, for those who don't know, in girls wrestling, there's no semi-state in the girls wrestling state tournament. So once you get to regionals, it's state from there. So we look forward to see how well Garrett does in the regional. Garrett advanced, I know that for sure, and then East Noble advanced in regionals. I'm not sure why they're showing all the teams from sectionals, but I'm very certain that Garrett and East Noble advanced as a team. Here we go. So going back to the IHSAA website here. So the Goshen Regional, which is going to take place at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So the Goshen sectional winners are going to be feeding into this Goshen Regional. So they're going to pretty much stay where they were last week. So it's the top 4 place winners in each weight class advance to the regionals here. As far as regionals go, the feeder sectionals will, in the Goshen region, will include the Goshen sectionals. So the winners from the participants that advanced from Goshen sectional, they're going to stay in the Goshen regional. And then the Rochester regional, the winners from Columbia City will feed into Rochester. And then the Alexandria regional, the feeder winners from Muncie Central will go into Alexandria. So we're going to have participants from 3 of the 4 regionals here. And so that's how things roll with that. So again, top 4 place winners will advance to the state finals, which will take place on January 17th, hosted by what it used to be called the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, but it's now known as the Corteva Coliseum and whatnot. But either way, January 10th is going to be the day of regionals, the first ever regional for girls wrestling. We wish all the participants that advance the best of luck in Goshen, Rochester, and Alexandria on that part. Also looking around with wrestling briefly real quick, I do want to quickly mention the performances taking place at North Montgomery this past week, and this includes what took place at North Montgomery. New Haven was the lone representative in this holiday duels, and just like last season, New Haven won this invitational once again. And as you can see here, we're going to scroll down. We're going to scroll down the list here if I can. There we go. So we begin with 106. Juliana Ocampo of New Haven took first place in the 106. She picked up her 150th dual win in her career for the senior out of New Haven, who's now just wrestling with the guys. But Kari Cooper of New Haven, I believe he's just a freshman. Cooper took first place in the 113. Sorry, Cooper's a sophomore. I take that back. You have Timmy Rocha, a senior, undefeated on the season. He took first place in 120. 126 went to Sean Harris, another undefeated wrestler, as he took first place there. 132, nobody there. 138, Malachi Thoner, just a freshman, took second place in 138. Only his 4th loss of the season. Lost to a really good wrestler from Lincoln Way Central. And then let's see here. 150, nobody. 157, you had Ian Amstutz placing 3rd in the 3rd place match, defeating Jackson Gibson of Pendleton Heights. Just want to kind of scroll down here real quick. Chase Klein placed 5th. Vince LaPera placed 5th in the 215. And then lastly, in the 285, hey, that's a familiar name for all you football fans. Charles McGrant, or for a lot of folks in the football community, we call him Chuck McGrant, took first place in the 285, 20-2 on the season. He's defeated a 21-win Drew Leitus from Hamilton Heights. By the way, for those that don't know what our Facebook page looks like, this is Around the Northeast Corner. We're getting close to 6,000 followers at ANEC Sports. Please let people know that we do post content here on this Facebook page. Let people know that we cover these 30 schools that you see on our cover page here, and we do so pretty consistently, no less. We're going to scroll down here. By the way, this is the Facebook page of New Haven Wrestling when they found out they won their championship at North Montgomery. As you can see, there's Coach Lynn and Coach Ocampo. Excellent coaching staff, by the way, in New Haven. Look at this. Just a very special group of New Haven Bulldog wrestlers as well. There's some basketball content here, which is not relevant for this section here. Let's see. There's some ANEC stuff from basketball. There's the wrestling vote. Nice story about the Ocampo sisters right there. But let's get down to the state draws. Here we go. So we shared the team state brackets that were posted by the folks at Indiana Mats, and they had a nice show that WZBD covered last night. So we begin with Class 1A, and I don't know if I can make this bigger or not. Let's see what we can do here. Hold on just a second here. Well, I guess this is the least we can do for now. So here is 1A. As you can see on this bracket here, Adams Central, they've had a great season for this Adams Central Wrestling Club here. Number 1 ranked in Class 1A. They get the bye, and they'll wait Switzerland County, or 8th ranked Northfield. South Adams is ranked 5th. Here they will take on Alexandria in the first round. By the way, Adams Central is the host of this 1A state tournament, which will take place on Saturday. Number 4, Tell City will await the winner of that match. And then you have number 3, North Miami, getting the bye. And then East Side, not ranked per se, but did make the tournament bracket here. They will take on number 7, Rossville. The winner will face number 2 ranked Rensselaer Central. We do expect the Jets to have a chance to potentially attempt to win a state championship in Class 1A. And Adams Central, one of the great wrestling programs in all of Northeast India. But let's be honest, all of Adams County has done a great job with wrestling over the years. Take a look at Class 2A, the Garrett Railroaders. We're going to be talking with head coach Nick Kraus later on the show, which we talked prior to the selections being shown by Indiana Mats. Garrett got the bye as a number 1 seed. They'll wait the winner of Hanover Central and Bishop Chatard. Chatard's ranked number 8, as you can see here. Number 4, Bellmont gets the bye here. They'll wait either Crawfordsville or 5th ranked Mount Vernon Posey. 3rd ranked Delta, a team that beat Bellmont in the regular season in dual play. Delta is number 3. They'll wait Yorktown or 6th ranked Heritage Hills. And then number 2, New Prairie, will wait the winner of number 7, Purdue Polytech or Owen Valley. Again, Garrett, a team that's success over the years. This is a program that's been one of the top teams in all of Indiana in the past 5 or 6 years under Coach Kraus. This is just keep in mind that they just won a girls wrestling sectional. So Garrett wrestling is just getting big and big here. And we talked more in depth about both the boys and the girls wrestling teams. But Garrett expects to be a contender once again in the 2A state tournament. Should be a fun one. I hope we can get a Garrett Belmont semifinal matchup. I think that would be an excellent semifinal matchup there to see who gets to play, possibly Delta or New Prairie in the championship game, assuming that there's no upsets. And then lastly in Class 3, so Class 2A, obviously probably the toughest of the 3 state brackets that are relevant to us at ANEC Sports. Class 3 is definitely an interesting bracket, no less. Number 1, Lowell gets the bye. They'll wait the winner of Martinsville or 8th ranked Hobart. 5th ranked Floyd Central will take on Terre Haute South. Franklin, the 4th seed, will wait the winner of that matchup. 3rd ranked Columbus East will wait the winner of Greenfield Central or 6th ranked Bloomington South. And then Number 2, Roncalli will get the bye. And honestly, I think Roncalli got a brutal draw here, considering the fact that New Haven is ranked 7th in the 3A state bracket. And there's some people in New Haven that think, yeah, that's a bit disingenuous, considering New Haven's undefeated on the season, 9 seniors. They have a state champion wrestler back from last year, defending champion in Easton Doster, still on this team. They got 9 seniors, very, very good New Haven wrestling team. A lot of undefeated wrestlers as well. And they'll take on New Pal in the first round. But New Haven get past that New Pal matchup. I mean, I think that potentially that Roncalli New Haven matchup could be, no pun intended here, a dogfight of a matchup in Class 3A. So here I am. I'm back. So now let's take a look at girls basketball first, and then we will shift over to the boys. So let's go ahead and first recap with girls basketball. By the way, this is John Harrell's website here. Please use it. It's wonderful. But anyway, let's go over to girls basketball. We want to first talk things over about the ACAC, because this coming week is a big week for the ACAC. But over the weekend for the Bluffton Tigers, they had a bit of a long break after their last game against Adams Central, where they played them to a 70-33 Tiger win back on December 21st at the Hangar. Fell to the Bellmont Braves on Saturday, 53-47. Just an off-shooting game for the Bluffton Tigers, at least inside. They had a slow start in that game, and then they committed 23 turnovers by my count in that matchup as well. Nonetheless, just wasn't their night against a very good Bellmont man defense. But I do want to make sure I mention this real quick here, but the Jay County Patriots and the Bluffton Tigers at the Tiger Den, this is the ACAC game of the week, and depending on how things go with this matchup, this could be the game that decides the ACAC championship due to the ACAC tiebreaker rules, and consider the fact that Jay County, who is currently on a bit of a skid right now, losing to Fountain Heights and Yorktown. The Patriots have already lost to Woodland back on November 29, 52-46, despite Hallie Schwiederman's best efforts with her 30-point performance against the Warriors. Unfortunately, Alyssa Anderson and Woodland had other ideas in that matchup, and that's a big one because Woodland, just a couple weeks ago, back on December 13th, lost to Bluffton 66-43. So as they stand right now for the ACAC standings, Jay County and Woodland both have a conference loss. Woodland has lost to Bluffton. Jay County lost to Woodland. So if Bluffton defeats Jay County on Friday, considering the tiebreaker rules, the Bluffton Tigers will win their first ever conference championship, and it'll be an outright championship. But if the Bluffton Tigers do lose to Jay County, which they haven't beaten Jay County since the 06-07 season, and particularly they have not beaten them since they were conference rivals, if Jay County is successful once again, you're looking at a scenario where if these teams win out, you're talking about a 3-team share. Now, this is the thing. It has to be assuming that Jay County beats Bluffton on Friday for that to happen. If Bluffton beats Jay County, none of that matters. The Bluffton Tigers are outright conference champions because of the tiebreaker. Woodland, the only thing Woodland can do is you got to hope that Bluffton loses to Jay County and then they win out the rest of the way. So then you have this 3-way share. But as of right now, Woodland is in the situation where they need help more so than Woodland controlling destiny, where Bluffton is controlling destiny. They just got to take care of business on Friday, and the ACAC regular season championship is wrapped up. Taking a look at the Northeast 8, this is a big week for the NEA, particularly with Bellmont and Columbia City. The Bellmont Braves over the weekend defeated 2 state-ranked teams. By the way, you will see our interview with Andy Heim later on the show as he talked about those 2 big wins against Eastside and Bluffton on the 3rd and 4th. Belmont won over 2 weeks of preparation for this matchup with the Eastside Blazers. Belmont defeated Eastside on the road 54-52. And then the next night they came in at the TP and defeated the Bluffton Tigers 53-47. So you're talking about 2A number 10 Eastside, 2A number 8 Bluffton, 3A number 8 Belmont defeats both of these state-ranked teams to improve to 14-1. The last time the Bellmont Braves have had a start like this, you have to go all the way back to, I'm joking when I'm saying this, 2 years ago. They had a start very similar to this year. They only lost one game going into that matchup against Columbia City on the road. You can see that score right there, 47-46 to Columbia City. In fact, Bellmont actually led this game until the final seconds of that game. Addie Baxter was fouled, and in somewhat of a by some fans on the Bellmont side, they claim that was a controversial call. I don't know. That's your choice if you think it was controversial or not. That's none of my business to say. But either way, Addie Baxter got to the free throw line, made the 2 free throws, and Columbia City would go on to win the conference championship outright for the first time since the late 90s. We're in a situation right now where if Columbia City wins out, they will win their second outright conference championship in a span of 3 years. Bellmont has not won the NE8s in basically since Grace Hunter's last year, which would have been 2018-19. So let's take a look here. So the 21-3 season that Bellmont had, that was the last time the Bellmont Braves successfully won the Northeast States. Unfortunately for Unfortunately for Bellmont, I should say, they fell to Marion in the sectional championship game, and Marion would go on to play in semi-state, if I recall. And that was the year they had a really talented team, a lot of size, and they would lose to Northwestern in the semi-state championship. And then Bellmont would not win another sectional championship until just 2 years ago in 2022 for the 14th year head coach, Andy Heim, and his program. Columbia City, 13-3. They've won their last 4 games. They swept the Twin Lakes Invitational just a week ago, actually almost 2 weeks ago, I should say, where they defeated Crown Point, Chittard, and McCutcheon to take home this championship. Addie Baxter averaged, I believe, around 30 points, 32 points per game in that 3-game span. She scored 93 points in the process. And we're at the situation now where not only can Addie Baxter surpass Connie Myers for the program's scoring record, but she's roughly 200 points away from becoming the school's all-time leading scorer, which is Mitchell Wilson of Columbia City, the 2020 grad, who would go on to have a solid career at Huntington University. But Addie Baxter, a Miss Indiana basketball candidate, looking to bring home some hardware. And keep in mind, Columbia City has not won a sectional since the year 2000, which was Connie Myers' senior year. And unfortunately for Connie, she did not play in the state finals, or at least she did not play at her normal self because she was injured. She had an ACL injury, did not play at the level she normally does or normally did in her career. And they lost to, I believe it was Cathedral in the state finals. But that's the situation we're looking at right now for Columbia City and Bellmont. These 2 teams will meet on Friday, but Columbia City does have a matchup with Carroll on Wednesday in Huntertown. This is a makeup from earlier in the season. That game had to be rescheduled due to the Carroll volleyball team winning a state championship. So these 2 teams will meet on Wednesday before that big matchup against the Bellmont Braves at the Birdcage. This game could go a long way in deciding the Northeast State. But unlike the ACAC, there are no tiebreakers. So sharing in this conference is still possible no matter what. In the NECC, we got another big matchup coming up for the NECC game of the week, and that will be the Fairfield Falcons traveling to Butler to take on the Eastside Blazers. But first things first, Eastside's got the big matchup with the Cal on Tuesday, which is tomorrow night at the old Butler Gym. The Cal Barons, Eastside Blazers are county rivals, as the Cal is coming off a 53-39 win over Lakewood Park. Ellington Sparkman, a freshman, had 15 points and 3 threes to lead the Barons to a balanced scoring win against the Lakewood Park Panthers, another DeKalb County rival. As for Fairfield, they get their first game since December the 20th, to which they defeated Elkhart Christian 50-34. They're going to be hosting Garrett tomorrow night before traveling up the east side, or traveling down the east side, I should say, on Friday. You will hear my interview with Kyle Hartman later on the show talking about the Fairfield Falcons. Looking to Hoosier Plains briefly here. Elkhart Christian comes in undefeated in the Hoosier Plains Conference, 11-4 overall. Bethany Christian still has not won a game since the season opener against West Snowball. They have lost the last 12 games, and the Bruins are unfortunately going through a string of, let's just say, injuries, just adversity. A lot of adversity right now for the Bethany Bruins, but you cannot deny their effort whatsoever. They will be taking on Lakewood Park on the 9th, which is a Thursday night matchup against Lakewood Park, who comes in at 9-4. For the Ava McGray-led Lakewood Park Christian Panthers under head coach Jared Eastep. They have a pretty busy week as well, as they will be traveling to Woodland tomorrow night. They'll be traveling to Bethany on Thursday, and then they'll be traveling to Elkhart Christian on Saturday. Two sectional rivals potentially could meet again later this season in this sectional tournament. Both teams, or at least both having great seasons, but Elkhart Christian currently has 11 wins. Lakewood Park 9 wins on the season. And keep in mind that the Woodland game in particular, Lakewood Park had to go to overtime with Lakewood Park, and Woodland had to go to overtime last year, where the Panthers won 55-54 in overtime. Should be an interesting matchup in Woodburn. And then lastly, let's talk about the Three Rivers Conference. And in the TRC, you're looking at two undefeated teams in the TRC. The Wabash Apaches and the Whitko Wildcats sit 4-0 in the TRC. Wabash 12-3, Whitko 9-3, both on a winning streak, although Wabash has won their last 4 games, particularly due to the fact that they did win their 3rd straight Wabash County tournament by defeating Northfield and Manchester in overtime. By the way, if you have not seen the Hail Mary 3-point shot by one of Manchester's guards, I think it was Walker, I believe that was the girl that hit that shot to force overtime. That was one heck of a shot. You can see that on the Wabash County News Facebook page. I think they have that video still posted there. But nevertheless, Wabash does win the tournaments, as they will be taking on the Whitko Wildcats. That will be a game we will be previewing at ANEC Sports, because this is the game that's very relevant to us because of the fact the Whitko Wildcats are in prime position to possibly win the TRC for the 2nd year in a row, which Whitko has never repeated as conference champions. So this is kind of big news for Whitko fans, and this is only the second. They've only won 2 conference championships in their entire history. So this is kind of an unprecedented territory right now for the Whitko Wildcats under Justin Jordan, who are coming off a nice win against the Northrop Bruins in the Huntington North Holiday Hoop Shootout after losing to Huntington North in the opening game of their tournament, 52-41. They beat Northrop 69-64, which is a revenge game from the 25-point loss to them back on November 23rd. So that's some of the things to keep an eye on for the girls. Now we want to shift over to the boys' side. Again, this is John Harrow. So again, if you need some basketball information, any statistics or predictions, it can all be found on this website here. Beginning with the ACAC, we want to briefly just talk about some things here, as this is the last week before the ACAC tournament begins for both the boys and the girls in the ACAC. Adams Central at Jay County on Saturday, so we won't see any action until that day. So you got the Jets and the Patriots. That will be another game we'll discuss at ANEC Sports for the other portion of the ACAC game of the week. The Jets currently in first place, 6-2 overall, 2-0 in the conference. They're coming off a 10-point win over Parkway, Ohio, where Trace Muller had 27 points in that matchup. Braylon Weaver, I believe, had 16. So nice balanced scoring from those two guys against a tough Parkway defense. And then you have Blatford against South Adams. Blatford currently 5-4. They did start the season 4-1, but they have lost 3 of the last 4. What does Coach Rowe and the South Adams Starfires have up their sleeve when the Star Dome becomes the host site for the Blatford Bruins? They have lost their last 3 games, but they've been competitive in the last 2 against Fort Recovery and Northfield. They are kind of a scrappy group of players at South Adams. This could be a trap game for the Blatford Bruins. Bluffton and Woodland. This is a preview of that first round matchup between these 2 teams. Bluffton going to Woodburn. The Tigers are coming off a dominant win against Lakewood Park, where Declan Greiser had 26 points to erase an early deficit and defeat the Panthers by 31 points. Woodland coming off a solid come from behind win against the Fremont Eagles, 50-39. They were down as many as 8 points in the first half. They came back to defeat Fremont 50-39 thanks to 16 points from Mason Moore that allowed the Woodland Warriors to get this win. But again, they really want to get better in the ACAC right now. Woodland not doing as well as they probably should. 1-1 conference, 4-6 overall. But I think the record doesn't really serve justice of just how good this Woodland team is at times. Shifting over to the Northeast 8. Our other NEA game of the week will feature the New Haven Bulldogs and the Cal Barons. Both teams sitting around 500. New Haven's 5-5. They haven't not played since December 28th when they were in the Phil Kotz Memorial Tournament in Kokomo, whereas the Cal is 5-4. They're coming off a 2-1 performance when they traveled to Shenandoah in that tournament for the Raider Christmas the Raider Christmas Classic. Try speaking that 50 times. Anyway, the Cal lost to Greenwood Christian in overtime before dominating Rushville and Indy Lutheran in the process. But this should be an interesting matchup. This is a matchup with some close wins over the years. The rivalry game for these two schools. And these are two teams that play very different styles of basketball. New Haven likes to get out and go. The Cal's a little more of a pragmatic, a very disciplined team. They're gonna burn a lot of clock. They're gonna be very selective on their shots. Very tough defense that the Cal's known for. They're gonna be a team that relies on their patience and some opportunity shooting nonetheless for the Cal Barons. But last season, these two teams met to a 56-46 to Cal win. A couple years ago, New Haven won that matchup 54-40. This year, actually, I'm not sure why it's saying that to Cal, but let me see here. Yeah, it says it to Cal, but last year they were in DeKalb, so I thought they would be in New Haven this year, but I guess not. That's interesting to note that. But anyway, it's still going to be an intriguing matchup nonetheless between the Cal Barons and New Haven Bulldogs, as the NE8 is still very wide open, still very early in the conference race for the Northeast State. In the NECC, we have our eyes on the Lakeland Lakers and the West Noble Chargers in our other portion of the NECC game of the week. Both teams sitting tied for first place in the conference at 4-0, but both teams having very different experiences so far this year. Lakeland coming in 7-2. They've been mostly dominant all season long, and many would argue they probably could have done a better job in the end against Northside. Other than that, they've been very strong this year. I mean, defeating Westview and Fairfield, defeating Fremont, beating a very good Fort Wayne Hawks homeschool team, and dominated a very good Centerville team up in Michigan who came into that game undefeated. This balanced scoring Lakeland team with a lot of experience is going to be taking on the West Noble Chargers, a team that's going to be very, very reliant on their defense. That's going to dictate what West Noble can do against the Lakeland Lakers. This has been a close series over the years, and especially in recent memory, it's been kind of a hot rivalry between the Lakeland Lakers and the West Noble Chargers. Last season, Lakeland defeated the West Noble Chargers, but only by 5 points. So again, don't assume just because Lakeland's having a great season, don't assume that they're just going to roll over the West Noble Chargers. They have shown some of late. They've won 3 of the last 4, which includes a pretty solid win against Central Noble and competing pretty well against Wayne Trace, Ohio, a team that crushed West Noble last season. So you know the Chargers are definitely going to be in this thing with their defense, that zone defense, that zone press that West Noble's known for under Ethan Marsh. Should be an interesting matchup in Ligonier. Fremont Busco will be an interesting matchup as well. Central Noble Garrett. What does Central Noble bring defensively to frustrate Garrett's offense? Because right now, Garrett will be a heavy favorite right now in that matchup. And then Prairie Heights Angola, another intriguing matchup on Friday. Niles Knots and the Angola Hornets taking on Cade Batchelor and Caston Day of the Prairie Heights Panthers. Looking at the Hoosier Plains Conference, we are going to be previewing the Tuesday matchup tomorrow night. Elkhart Christian and Bethany Christian at NEC Sports. This is a critical matchup for the Hoosier Plains Conference between these two Elkhart County rivals. Last year, These two teams met in not double overtime. These two teams met in overtime, I should say. They did meet. I mean, Bethany did win in double overtime last year, but that was at Wawa C. Last season, they did need overtime against Elkhart Christian, where the Bruins defeat the Eagles 57-53 on their way to another Hoosier Plains championship. The Bruins and Eagles, both definitely competitive teams again, but more so with Bethany. They've been a battle-tested team this year, and this is going to be a tricky matchup to see whether or not the Bruins can put themselves in position to potentially win the Hoosier Plains Conference once again. They got a lot of experience back, a lot of nice veterans, nice athleticism with this Bethany Christian team. And again, another intriguing matchup that will take place at the Meadowlands in Goshen. And then lastly, we'll take a look at the Three Rivers Conference. And right now, Whitco sitting around 500. Actually, same amount of 500 in conference, but overall, they're struggling a little bit this year. They're 2-7, kind of a transition year for the Whitco Wildcats, a rebuilding year under Robert Warrick. They did have a nice win against Bethany Christian back on the 27th in that holiday invitational, which I believe this one was at Lakeland Christian before eventually the tournament went to Grace College, as I was informed that these two events actually, as the entire tournament was shared separately by these two campuses. But nevertheless, the Whitco Wildcats, they're fighting, they're clawing their way, trying to be as competitive as possible. And now they get back to conference play. They lost to McConaughey by 25 points on Saturday. They'll look to bounce back on Friday when they host Rochester before taking on Lakewood Park on Saturday. So they're going to have a string of 4 home games in a row. Rochester, Lakewood Park this week, Southwood next week, and then Northfield the week to follow before they go on another 4-game road trip to Prairie Heights, Peru, South Adams, and North Miami. Whitco looking for some wins as we get to the halfway mark of the season. And so that's where we stand right now in the talk around the corner. And now we get to our interviews. I will be speaking with Nick Kraus of the Garrett Railroaders wrestling team, followed by the head girls basketball coach of the Bellmont Braves, Andy Heim. Then the head boys basketball coach of East Snowball, Brandon Durnell. And to cap things off, I spoke with the head girls basketball coach of Fairfield, Kyle Hartman. I'm here with the head wrestling coach of the Garrett Railroaders, Nick Kraus. Nick, how are things going for you on this busy weekend for Garrett Wrestling?
Going well. Had a busy weekend. Had the girls sectional on Friday. The boys had the weekend off. We got the seating show tonight for Team State for boys. So staying busy.
We'll talk about 2 of those things later on. But first off, before we talk about those things, I do want to briefly talk about your background with coaching wrestling, particularly with Garrett. Talk a little bit about yourself for those that don't know about you.
So I was an assistant at Garrett for 2 years. I went to New Prairie High School over in Northwest Indiana. Wrestled at Trine, got a job at Garrett. I think I've been the head coach. I think this is my 12th year. So it's really the only place I've ever taught and coached at. I coached a couple wrestling clubs like Kingdom Wrestling Club, Indiana Extreme for a brief while when it was held at Snyder High School. I've done camps and that stuff, I guess, since I've been in college. But in terms of being a high school coach, it's been Garrett and Garrett only.
Yeah, and you're joining yourself a nice list of coaches that have won 200 plus games in the history of Garrett Athletics. You reached that mark just before the Christmas break during one of the dual matches on the boys' side. You've also coached some state championship wrestler, or at least state contending wrestlers. You did coach one state champion in Chase Leach, who won state last year. You've had several others along the way, the Fieldens, the Bradys of the world. It's a rich history of Garrett wrestling and whatnot. Talk about how grateful it has to be able to coach some of the best wrestlers to ever come out of Northeast Indiana.
Oh, it's awesome. I think other kids in the area can realize that nothing necessarily came easy for these guys. And we talk about a lot of the placers we've had that had losing records as freshmen in high school, like Bo Davis. Back when I first started, he had a losing record as a freshman. He worked really hard, got to where he was. Hayden Brady was injured all the time, and his junior year ended up top 4 placement, and right now he's the number 2 wrestler at Northern Colorado, which is a pretty good D1 school. So that's big time. But Chase Leach in particular, going into his freshman year, he wrestled at the Disney Duels with us, and he went 0-11. He didn't pick up a win. And I think just kids in the area, no matter if it's wrestling, whatever sport, if you work really hard, you can get somewhere with your sport. Hard work does a lot, and I don't think we should lose track of that. And it's been a lot of coaches. It's not me. I've helped him. He's had club coaches help him. All the coaches at Garrett, the parents being supportive. All those things really, really matter a lot.
Mm-hmm. And you've had some Fieldings along the way. Carter Fielding is a state-ranked, or at least a semi-state ranked wrestler in the 144-pound class. Your team did very well in the Al Smith Invitational in Mishawaka, placing 6th overall. You had Abram Swaffwood placing 2nd in the 113 bracket, losing to a really nice wrestler from Lowell, Indiana. You got a couple of kids from the football team, Aiden Hunt and Nate Wells. Talk about this year's boys wrestling team and where do you think this team might stack up this year come state tournament time?
So, yeah, you brought up Fielding. I do want to mention Clayton making it under the lights, Carter's older brother. I think that was huge for our program because then it gave kids something to shoot for. And I know Leach talked about that during his interview last year. I know Carter really wants to be under the lights and winning that thing, and he's fully capable. Abrams, capable of it as well. At 113, Abrams super strong. And he, as long as the diet and attitude and effort are under control for all these boys, they got a good chance to do stuff. Team-wise, we'll definitely be in the running to win the sectional and the regional. Semi-state, we can make a push as long as we send out messages to the kids, like making good decisions, treating your body right, taking care of your hygiene, which is super important in wrestling, getting vitamin C in you, making sure your grades are good, just focusing on wrestling and your friends and family and doing the right thing all the time. If you're doing that, you're going to give yourself a good chance to win because I know they practice hard. I know they train hard. Aiden Hunt, I know you brought him up, and obviously he had a phenomenal football season, as did all my football players, Wells and Chase Egley. Egley's really started to come along strong. He's probably going to surprise some people. Wells, we pulled him out of the Al Smith after one match, and it was strictly precautionary because we wanted him for team state. Everything came back fine. He was a little mad at me that I pulled him out, but we're looking out for the long run thing there. And, Hunt was winning every match that he lost on day 2 of the Al Smith. So he knows where he's at. The kid that's currently ranked 9th, Hunt, pinned him. So we've got kids that are capable. You just got to put it all together at the right time and realize this is a marathon season, not a sprint season.
Mm-hmm. And especially when you get to the state tournament, there's a lot of mental toughness and conditioning that goes in the state tournament. You're playing on these really early morning matches too, so be able to get the right sleep, right preparation, the right diet, so to speak. And it's really hard when you're dealing with high schoolers and have to deal with these changes because it's a marathon, like you said. This is a long season, about 3 or 4 months. So you don't get, that's just the regular season alone. And so this is a big battle test for a lot of those wrestlers, especially when they come in as freshmen or sophomores and have to adapt from going to middle school to high school.
Yeah. And you brought up freshmen. We got one freshman that's in our lineup right now at 120 that has lost, I think, 5 or 6 matches that have all been within a decision range. And they've all been to kids that are ticket rounders, placers. So he's turning the corner. Caleb Asa, he's really close to breaking through. Another freshman we had, he progressed quicker than we thought. So we sat him out of the Al Smith because we had to watch our points. Eli Wright, he's 13-1 this season. It wasn't a complete shock to us, but I guess he's progressed even quicker than we thought. So I'm excited to see how he does at Team State, wrestling some tough kids, because I think he's pretty good. And just not everybody got to see it. The Al Smith's kind of like one of those things where everybody gets to see how good you are, and unfortunately we kind of had to sit him due to points.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to go ahead and shift over to girls wrestling because sectionals happened on Saturday, the first ever state tournament sponsored by or sanctioned by the IHSAA. There was a state tournament last year, but it wasn't an IHSA sanctioned sport at that time. So now you had your team win the first ever girls wrestling sectional alongside other 2 schools in our ANEC coverage in Jade County and New Haven from respective sectionals. But for your team specifically that won it at Goshen, you had 2 first-place winners in Vea Wilson and Rain Trineri. You had like 5 third-place winners and did very well as a team in that sectional. What are some takeaways coming out of that first ever sectional tournament for girls wrestling in Garrett?
Well, I want to mention it's on Fridays and just put this out there. I know that's not super convenient for all the parents necessarily. I think part of the reason the IHSA did it, and I'm not trying to speak for them, but is maybe lack of officials, because all the boys stuff's on Saturday. So the girls season started about 3 weeks earlier, and a lot of the same officials are doing both, as is our coaches. So I think having it on Friday works for them. I know it's not the most convenient for working parents, grandparents, and fans, but I just want to put that out there. Takeaways right now, we are getting better at wrestling, but some of the girls that we've got this year that came out, I don't know if they completely understood what it was to be a high school athlete for a full season. And then we had the other ones that were accustomed to that. But there's been some adjustments from that, but they kind of really put it together towards the end of the season. We hadn't won a trophy all year, so we picked the right time to do it. We'd always been in the running. But the other thing, too, is I try to let them know, like, you just went through, like, in my opinion, what's the hardest high school sport there is. You have to watch your weight. Your hygiene should be good no matter what, but especially in wrestling, like, if you lose track of it, you could get ringworm or something like that, and it can put you out. The practices are grueling. We practice them together, and everybody does the same thing. So they've gotten accustomed to practicing like that, the way that we practice at Garrett. And really, like, they've gotten a lot better at wrestling. Even every week you can see something. Like our 105-pounder started hitting low singles the other day. I'm like, Madeline, where did that come from? She's like, oh, we learned it the other day, so I figured I'd do it. It looked really good. You know, I'm really proud of them. They came a long way. It's a hard sport. They figured out ways to win. Our two girls that are really experienced in comparison to the others, they help the girls quite a bit. They'll go with the other girls and, you know, tell them what they're doing wrong. So it's like having another set of coaches in the room, which is awesome. I've got a girl staff that consists of Emily Kraus, who's my wife, Isabel Fielden, who's obviously related to the Fieldens. I've got Jeff Wilson, who's my main assistant on the girls' end. He's been phenomenal. And then all the boys' coaches help also. Like Tyler Lanning goes to all the girls' stuff. Poppy helps. Fielden helps. Carlos Hathaway, who's got a sister on the team. Our coaches are all in on boys and girls wrestling. We're not one or the other. We're all in on both of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and first off, I want to thank you for pointing out about the differences with the girls wrestling state tournament, because even I just forgot that it was on Friday, not Saturday. It's still adjustment period as it's the first year of the state tournament, and that's going to take some time and whatnot. You know, this is the 50th year for girls basketball and some of the female sports that came around in the early 70s. You know, it's going to be one of those things we look back 50 years from now and be like, hey, you remember that first year in 2024-25, the first ever girls wrestling state tournament? I think, to me, going from where it was before that tournament to now, it's got to be a revolutionary moment for the sport of wrestling as it grows for girls wrestlers across the state of Indiana.
It's huge, and we were one of the last states, like, in the United States to sanction it, which was honestly crazy, because you look at our girls at the national level. Alara Boyd, she's been phenomenal. Kayla Miracle, Sarah Hildebrandt, and I'm sure I'm missing another one or two right now, but two of those girls I named were on the Olympic team. And I mean, we were one of the last ones to sanction it. Better late than never. We got it done. And I think part of the reason we were late is the IHSA wanted to make sure they had all their ducks in a row, so to speak, and to make sure they did it the right way, which is good. I'm good with that. But it changed, at least at Garrett, and I'm sure it's other schools. We had 4 girls out at one time last year at the high school level. We had 23 to start with this year, finished with 21. That alone, the fact that it's sanctioned, I think made a big difference for a lot of the girls. That knowing that they can get their picture on the wall, they can get a patch on the jacket, they can get some of these accolades, and it's from our governing body. I think that was huge. And I think, I'll give you an example. We had one girl this year who came to the call-out meeting. She's like, I'm going to be a manager. I said, no, you're going to wrestle. She goes, oh, okay. She came to wrestling for one of the preseason ones. Is like, yeah, this isn't for me. And I'm like, well, why don't you still manage? After watching two of the girls practices, she's like, hey, I'm sorry for being flaky, but can I actually wrestle? I didn't know this many girls were going to be doing it. I said, absolutely. That's why we wanted to keep you around, because I knew she'd be pretty good. And Her name's Chloe. She ended up having a good year. First year wrestler, had a winning record, was in a stacked 190 bracket and took 5th. So she's an alternate, but she had never done it before. And just seeing the other girls do it, it's kind of like, oh, I could do this too. And it looks pretty fun.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to see what happens with Garrett and all their girls wrestlers as they get to the regionals, semi-state, and then the state. The first ever IHSA section state finals will certainly be a historic one, nonetheless. I have one last question for you, Coach. I know you got some plans ahead tonight. By the time this episode is posted, we will probably know by now about the team draws for the state tournament for boys wrestling. For those that don't understand, like the process of between the classified state tournament, which I'm assuming that's what this one is, and then the one that we know at the end of the season. Talk about some of the things that are maybe slightly different between the two, and then talk about the experience of being a part of both of those tournaments.
Okay, so back when I was in high school and before that, they would take the top 2 teams out of sectionals and they would go on to team regionals regardless of class size. The IHSA did away with that. So the IHSWCA created this current team state about 15 years ago. And what they do is they take your scores from the year prior based on the kids coming back, and they give you a little bit of a success factor point and the genius rating, maybe who some of your incoming freshmen are. And you have this point system that's set up by somebody a lot smarter than me. And the top 10 teams in 2A will qualify, and then they'll vote in 2 other teams. So it's not foolproof, but the 12 teams that are there are the 12 best teams in 2A. And to put in perspective, football, there's 6 classes, and I think basketball is there 4 or 5.
There's 4.
Okay. So wrestling, they shrunk it down to 4. So your 1 is your small schools, your 2 is your small mediums, your 3 is your big schools that aren't huge, and then your 4 is comparable to 6A in football. So they do it this way because in reality, you're not going to see the way in a dual format. It's not going to be often that you see a really small school beat the likes of a Center Grove or a Crown Point. It does happen, but you're not going to get that to happen too often. So now it's a level playing field. Like I said, while the system's not foolproof, I don't think that there's ever a team that's not in it that would have won the whole tournament. So you truly are getting the best 1A, 2A, 3A, and 4A wrestling teams in the state in a dual format. So we take a lot of pride in it. All the other schools do too. It's something we've won it once. We've been in the finals 2 other times. At this point, I don't think we're looking to get 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. Like, we want to win it. Anything else is disappointing when you're there. We think we can win it. We know we can win it. We just got to go out and do it.
Mm-hmm. And this is a program with high expectations because they've won the conference the last several years and whatnot. So this should not be a surprise that you are expected to compete for a first place in your classified tournament. We do have several other area schools competing in each of the classifications 1A, 2A, and 3A, respectively. So we do expect some nice local representation in that state tournament. Coach, I want to leave you for any final thoughts you have before I let you go.
Yeah, just good luck to all the schools around the area as they do team state and their other tournaments coming up. I hope they represent our area well. I think with the rise of the Fort Wrestling Facility and Warrior RTC, the area's wrestling has went up quite a bit. And there's a couple other clubs too that do stuff here and there. I know Solid Tech has a group they do stuff with. I might be missing some, but those groups and those training facilities have made it to where a lot of these kids train together, and the whole level of Northeast Indiana has went up. And I think that's because they're training together and iron sharpens iron. So unless we're wrestling each other, obviously Garrett versus New Haven, I want Garrett to win, but New Haven, Eastside, Adams Central, any of the Northeast schools, if they're down there, I want them to win. I want them to win and represent our half of the state.
Mm-hmm. That is for sure. Coach, thank you for taking the time to talk about Garrett Wrestling. Good luck as you await your draw tonight, and good luck the remaining of the season, not only for your boys, but also remaining of the state tournament run for girls.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm here with the head girls basketball coach of the Bellmont Braves, Andy Heim. Coach, how are things going for you over these last 48 hours where you took down two state powerhouses?
Oh, it's obviously been a pretty busy couple days, but I think everybody's been excited. Last night the game was pretty packed. We had a good home crowd, and I think everybody's excited to see us play for sure.
Mm-hmm. Coach, last season you had a really talented forward by the name of Haley Cole, and now you see her playing at Trine University, one of the best forwards to ever come out of Belmont High School, one of the best players in general as an athlete. Just talk about what Haley Cole brought to Belmont that really just kind of brought an impact to this program for the next group of players coming up.
Yeah, we've talked about this before that, we had girls, 10 years ago sort of start the tradition of hard work and dedication and sort of what Belmont basketball means to everybody. And Haley was one of the, people that sort of carried that tradition on. It was awesome. She started off as a freshman, not knowing if she wanted to play basketball at all. She was pretty focused on volleyball, and it took a little bit of convincing to some people. And then she sort of found a love for it when she started playing basketball. She still obviously played volleyball and was super successful there too. But it was just, it was rewarding because she's such a good person that she found a home at Trine that I think she really likes. She's been back in the gym with us a little bit over break. And just, her talking about how she's first off the bench and how she's, doing the same Haley Cole things in college as she did in high school, 10 points, 8 rebounds, things like that, which, makes me happy, and it makes me happy to see her so happy.
You're always happy for all of your former players that end up playing at the next level and doing all the great things even outside of basketball. For instance, Grace Hunter, another great Belmont player that had some success at the college level. And then obviously Haley Cole had success in track and field last spring with the shot put and whatnot and making it to state there. So some nice accomplishments there. Let's talk about the Belmont Braves this year. You're off to your best start in 2 years where you had a very similar start, only one loss going into that Columbia City game. We'll talk about Columbia City later on, but you look at this team and I'm looking at the roster. There's only 2 seniors, one of which is Emily Blakey. I believe, or actually, I might be 3 seniors. Take that back. So
No, you're good.
3
You were
seniors.
right with 2.
Okay, 2 seniors. Thank you. So 2 seniors, and then you have 6 freshmen on this team, and half of them play a significant role for this team. And then, as I mentioned many times, the Fighting Blakeys take a big role of the Belmont Braves and whatnot. What do you like about this team so far as you enter into the halfway mark of the season?
The freshmen that you guys talk about, that everybody's talking about right now, they've been with us. It's similar to sort of, this is the first group that we've had that's sort of the Norwell approach to, a class coming in where they've been together since 4th grade. They've done a lot of outside basketball other than, just with us. They've gone up to Sport 1. They've done some things like that. A lot of those girls play, some form of AAU also. So it's been real nice to have them come in and have the success that they're having. Their hard work sort of has now officially paid off in high school. So to see them succeed is not a shock. To see them succeed as well as they have right now is a little bit of a surprise. I'm not going to lie to you. But it just goes to show their hard work. Obviously everybody has bad shooting practices, but I don't think we've had a bad intensity practice this year just because of them. A lot of it has to do with them just because they bring the energy. If you ask them to come before practice to shoot around and warm up, they're going to do everything. They're not just going to go out there and mess around. They're going to do everything that they need to do to improve somehow. And that's refreshing. And it sort of brings an interesting dynamic of seeing, freshmen come in and sort of show that modeled way, that everybody picks up on. And it's good, obviously, for the underclassmen. As far as our 2 seniors, Emily Blakey and Gwen Laurent, yeah, they're definitely sort of the backbone of the team. They've done a great job, whether it's, Emily leading by example and vocally, she's not hesitant to get on people if they need to work harder. And Gwen just sort of leads by her steady hand and her example out there also. Just people that have been with the program that sort of know what to do and know what to expect is obviously nice to have.
Mm-hmm. Intangible players is what your team has as well. Players that maybe don't always the stats and whatnot, but they're always doing the little things so well. The Lainey Frenches, the Kate Kitsons of the world, and they were a significant impact not only with against East Side, but also against the Bluffton Tigers. Coach, I'm looking at the schedule, and you played some quality competition as you would expect for Bellmont when you're playing a hard conference like the Northeast State, playing against Concordia and playing against Woodland and Jay County and Homestead, DeKalb, Lures, East Snowball, Carroll, Eastside, Bluffton. Lone loss coming against Homestead, but I have to say your team learned quite a bit from that game, and I think that's not a bad loss when you're only lost against Homestead of all teams. But I want to kind of move forward to those 2 wins against Eastside and Bluffton, both coming in state ranked in Class 2A. Eastside had their most successful start in the history of their program, which is a very good program themselves. You had a 2-point win against Eastside on the road, not an easy test against that physical defense that they like to run. And then Bluffton, one of the highest scoring teams of all in Indiana, averaging 73 points per game, held them to 47 points. And I think they only made 1 3 in the second half and shot well below their normal season high, around 46%. Coach, talk about your resilience for your team against Bluffton. Even though the offense went cold at times in that game against Bluffton, your team always had an answer when it mattered most, whether it was Ashley Blakey making a basket, whether it's Emily Blakey getting to the free throw line or getting a steal, or your other intangibles doing the little things and battling for those loose balls.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the wild thing about our team this year is that, we've had those games where a team's gone up by 1 or 2 or 3, or even, Eastside had us by 6 there at one point in time. I think it was 16-10. And you just kind of look out there and you look at the bench and nobody has a worried look on their face. And everybody's just kind of, they think that somebody's going to hit the next shot, which is, a testament to them, obviously. And as a coach, that's kind of a weird thing, especially with, like you said, we play, we start 2 freshmen and then 2 freshmen have, similar minutes to everybody else. We roll a pretty deep bench this year. So to see them not panic, it's really refreshing. As far as Bluffton, after a tough road win that was, a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, very physical. They're such a similar team to us. Eastside is that, we're physical, we're playing man. They're doing the same thing. So it was Saturday was kind of a question mark. We got up and had our shoot around from 10 to 11, and we talked about Bluffton because obviously we're not going to talk about Bluffton at all during the week. Our week is, solely set on Eastside to get the first one before we have to get the second one. So, we took an hour, warmed up, did some shooting, talked about what we needed to do, came back to the game a little bit early and talked a little bit about Bluffton and what we wanted to try to accomplish there. And then, the girls just went out and executed what we talked about. We really wanted to focus on the post play of Bluffton. We thought that might be something that they would target against us. We're not necessarily a team that has a traditional post. You mentioned Haley earlier in the broadcast, and like we don't have one of those, which isn't a bad or a good thing. It's just the thing that we sort of have to deal with. So we talked about how we wanted to guard the post and what we wanted to do, and for the people that haven't seen us, we've run 8 years of zone defense, and this is the first year where we've run basically 0 zone defense. Zone's kind of our go-to to throw people off this year where we're playing strictly man-to-man. So I was interested to see how we would handle sort of that abuse again, the beating on our bodies again for 2 nights in a row. And I thought we did a really nice job. Bluffton threw a lot of screens at us that I thought we did a real nice job of, either fighting through or hedging or whatever we were trying to accomplish in that. And yes, you're right. It looked a little bit sloppy at times. It probably wasn't the cleanest game that we've played all year, but you're going to have that, 2 games in a row, 2 physical opponents in a row. I wasn't expecting a 4, 5, 6 turnover game. I was expecting a little bit of sloppiness just because of the way they play also.
Yeah, I think I counted for 42 turnovers combined between the 2 teams. 23, which coming from Bluffton, which I guess you can say that's kind of a positive coming out of this. That you did force Bluffton to commit more mistakes in the end. And then the game filled with a lot of turnovers and for basically a parade of free throws and portions of that game, and really was a big part of how that game was decided or whatnot. And it kind of felt a little bit like a state tournament because you have the East Side game. You talked about putting all your energy on that East Side game, and then you got to quickly get to Bluffton, right? And so that kind of had that similar feel. So now you get to this week, and your focus is on Columbia City. At Columbia City, you know what it's like going up there in that tough environment, Columbia City. Just 2 years ago, when you actually had to start very similar to this year's, your team came very close to winning that game 2 years ago at Columbia City. Came down to free throws in the end, and we, on paper for the ANEC game, we kind of expect this game to be close. It's been a competitive game over the past few years. Everybody talks about Columbia City Norwell kind of being the big matchup, but I think this game whatnot. We obviously with Columbia City, Addie Bass is the Miss Indiana basketball player. Obviously, we've seen it the past 4 years now. She's one of the best players to ever come out of this area and whatnot. But when you look at this team as a whole, it's very similar to what your team likes to do on defense. They're going to attack, they're going to be aggressive, and they're going to play full court the whole way through. When it comes to aggressive style of defense, they got role players that play their roles well. What are your thoughts when as you look at that matchup with Columbia City?
Yeah, you brought up 2 years ago, and I think, if you ask some Bellmont people and possibly some people still on staff, we feel like we probably won that game. Even though it didn't show that at the very end. But I think we're excited to go back and try to give it another shot. For us, look, we treated this last weekend the same way. We want to learn from it. Do we want to win conference? Absolutely. That's a goal. Do we want to get better for the end of the year for some sort of run in the state tournament? That's obviously our main goal. Columbia City is going to play the type of role that, like you said, like that we play. They're going to be fast. Addie's going to do Addie things. Like I'd be silly to say if I could, sit down here and say I'm going to shut her down. That's just going to be an impossibility. It's sort of like people trying to game plan against Emily Blakey. They're like, the game plan can't be hold her to 0 to 4 points. We've got to execute our things because we know that they're going to execute their things. And I think our defense will give them problems. I think people don't understand, sort of the aggressiveness of our defense right now and how it wears people down, especially how we're, sort of defending in the full court a lot more. So I think it's going to be fun. At least it's going to be fun for the people that are watching, maybe not for Coach Shear and I, but it's going to be fun for people watching for sure.
Mm-hmm. So obviously with this game, it's the first of a kind of a gauntlet of a 3-game stretch. Columbia City this week. You've got Northrop, I believe, at Northrop next week, and then you're playing Norwell as well. And so you got that gauntlet of a 3-game stretch, obviously a difficult stretch for your team over the years that may, at least for those 2 games between Norwell and Columbia State, could decide the NEA, but nevertheless still big games as you get into the sectional hosted by Norwell this year. And it's a sectional where on paper it kind of feels like it's your team against Norwell on paper for that sectional championship. Coach, you kind of talked about this briefly, but how excited are you about the progression of this team? You talked about the freshmen kind of learning on the fly on this varsity team. How excited are you about the team playing as good a basketball as you would want to as they enter into that stretch of being ready for the playoffs?
Yeah, we rearranged our schedule a little bit this year. Obviously, you talked about Homestead, you talked about, Carroll and those games. We got those on our schedule because we wanted to sort of see some more difficult opponents as we're moving into sectionals and things like that. And this has been year 2 or 3 where this is the gauntlet of our run where we're hitting, Northrop, Columbia City, and throwing Eastside and Bluffton as well. They've been super tough the last couple of years. So this is what we want to see right now. And it's a preparation thing, and it's playing different styles on all those. We go into Northrop where it's going to be sort of an athletic, physical style, where we move into Norwell, not that they're, not athletic, but they're going to throw us that 1-3-1 at us. So we're just seeing different variations to hopefully help us grow. Again, going back to, not always falling back on the whole freshman thing, but we have to see those things, at least a time before hopefully we can get a little bit more comfortable with them and see where we can attack and see some things on film that hopefully help us out. But I know we're looking forward to this stretch right here. And we know that it's difficult. And, I think, every time I mention something at practice where, we're halfway through the season or we're 3/4 the way through the season, you see the 2 seniors sort of give a look that they're not ready for this to be over. So I think that sort of helps us moving forward also, where everybody's, excited to play. They want to continue on. And like I said, to start this thing, we're pretty intense at practice, which obviously helps things out. So I think we're going to give it our best shot in this run of 3 games. And whatever it shows. Let's say we go 0-3. It's not going to make a difference with these girls, I don't think, in the attitudes. Do they want to win? Absolutely. But are they going to hang their head and say that the season's done? Absolutely not.
No. And good teams always find a way to bounce back, even in a loss. Even if it's a tough loss, your team seems to always find a way to bounce back. Final question for me, this is a little bit more about your career right now at Bellmont. This is your 14th season at Bellmont. I can't believe it's been that long since you've been the head girls basketball coach at Bellmont. You've been through the highs, you've been through the lows with the team. You've helped the program win a couple conference championships and a sectional drought not too long ago and whatnot. How does it feel now looking back those 14 years so far, being a part of the Bellmont Braves, being a part of this history of girls basketball and bringing some excitement back to Bellmont girls basketball?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to look back, like you said, and it's wild that it's been this long. I love my time here. I have a daughter that's 7. Is she going to play basketball? I have no idea. So, I'm in this because I love basketball. I'm in this because I love coaching the girls and being around them. So it's I don't have necessarily something that a child coming up that I'm going to, see grow and do things like that. So to see where we've become, it's been pretty exciting. If you go back and ask some of those first few teams of, sort of what they did in practice and how I was as a coach, I'd say that I've changed quite a bit in our approach and things like that. I was always, right when I got the job, I was stuck with probably trying to prove too many things and try to be too hard on the girls and, this way and that way and my way or the highway, where that sort of got a little bit more lenient in our approach. And it comes down to, just forming a relationship with them and building the program from that way. You talked about Grace Hunter all the way at the beginning. She sort of started this whole turnaround for us where, it was hard work and it was demanding, but it was also, forming relationships and building off of that. And we've just sort of carried that on through our seniors all the way through, up until this year, where everybody knows the expectations and everybody understands and everybody's all right with, somebody saying, hey, we've got to do better here, but they also know deep down that everybody cares for one another. And we're a team, we're together. Like we talk about, probably like every coach talks about, we're together more during the season than probably they see their families. So we're more of a family than sometimes their families during season. And we have to approach it that way. And we have to understand, the roles that everybody plays. And I think that me as a coach, I've gotten more vocal with, having the hard conversations of the kids that are, playing 2, 3, 4 minutes here and there, to have those conversations with them earlier, so they sort of know their role and hopefully they're accepting of their role and they understand what they bring to the team also.
Mm-hmm. This is Andy Heim, the head girls basketball coach of the Bellmont Braves, as they battle for first place in the Northeast State coming up on Friday when they take on the Columbia City Eagles at Columbia City. Coach, I would like to take some time for any final thoughts before we let you go.
Yeah, one final thought would probably be that you mentioned sort of the people that might not get mentioned a whole lot when we play or when we're online or things like that. The Blakeys that tend to get mentioned quite a bit, but you're right. It takes everybody. And I think the coaching staff, and for sure me, I have confidence with everybody that's coming off the bench, whether they're playing 2-3 minutes or whether they're playing 15 minutes. But those people that come off the bench probably don't get the recognition that they should, just for their tough defense and scoring ability as well. So I'd like to for sure recognize them there. But other than that, thanks for having me.
All right, Coach. Good luck as you take on Columbia City, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Thank you.
I am here with the head boys basketball coach of the East Snowball Knights, Brandon Durnell. And Coach, what a way to kick off 2025. You're on a winning streak entering this week.
Yeah, absolutely. It was much needed after the start of our season, with obviously the late start and dealing with some injuries. We still are dealing with some injuries, but much needed week for us.
That is for sure. Coming into this year, this was a team that came off your first winning season as the head coach of East Snowball Knights, 12-11, showing promise of what this team can do when you're in full strength and everyone is kind of on the same page and whatnot. And you look at this year's teams at the start of the year, got off to a slow start, late start to the year because of football going to state finals. You mentioned the injuries because of some of the guys playing football, getting some of those injuries as well and whatnot, and dealing with a very difficult schedule, playing some road games as well. All those things kind of factored in. But so far, you've seen a huge step up from Nathan Boker, as well as Alex Scott coming in. And you had the halfway kid coming in and doing some nice things as well all around, and Kobe Ritchie doing Kobe Ritchie things and whatnot. Coach, as you assess things so far, what are the things you're seeing the most improvement with this team so far from the beginning of the season to now?
Well, the number one thing was we were going to have a no excuse mentality. No, it doesn't matter who we were going to put on that floor. We are confident in our system and we're confident in what we're doing. Obviously, with some inexperience, it's going to take more time to get success. But we felt there should be a no excuse mentality and just trying to make those kids do their job and try and make them compete every single possession. And so this is going to benefit us way down the road this year. It really is. And we know that. And it's cool to see even now, before we get a couple of our starters back, we're having some success with those inexperienced guys who we can't really call inexperienced anymore. They've got now some games at the varsity level. I mean, like you said, you named some of those guys. We feel a lot of those inexperienced guys have stepped up and have gotten better, and it's gonna make us deeper as the year gets on. The name Alex Scott, I feel like he had a big week this week, scoring 18 Thursday, and then played really well Friday at Central. Didn't score it as much, but did a lot of little things. He got into some foul trouble, but Ryland Hathaway he's such a great kid and competes every possession and does so many little things for us. And then you can talk about guys, Owen Souls, who got hurt. He did a nice job to start the year. He wasn't making a ton of mistakes and was just super solid for us. And then Evan Cope this week was dealing with some flu and some sickness. He did a really nice job. Before that, we're going to try and get him back in rhythm here the next few weeks. But you talk about all those inexperienced guys that have helped. Keegan Darius came in and gave us some nice minutes. So again, tons of younger guys that we've needed to step up, and they have. Now, did they have the success that we wanted, that everyone wants to have? No, it takes time, and we saw that this week a little bit.
Kind of a trial by fire with this team. Now, I do want to mention a little more about one of the more significant players back on this team in Nathan Boker. Last year, Boker had a solid year last year as a junior, average around, 8-9 points per game. Solid player, shot the ball pretty well when he was healthy and whatnot. This year, you're seeing a massive growth, not only with his stats, but also what he provides to your team beyond that. I mean, he's averaging 16 points per game, second in the conference, only trailing to Ethan Zahn of Huntington North, according to my calculations here. Coach, where have you seen the growth of Nathan Boker? We talked a lot about Ritchie over the years, but Boker has really stepped it up in the absence of some big names that have been dealing with injuries.
Well, I mean, Boker he's such an awesome kid, and he's earned all of this because he's our hardest worker. Probably not even close. I mean, he loves basketball, and he has put in probably the most time. Him and Riker Quick are probably our two love basketball guys, and I mean he has earned this. His hard work is translating onto the court, and it did last year a little bit. Now, what he has improved on from last year to this year is he's having less defensive breakdowns, and he's just scoring it and playing his game, and he's not overthinking things. He's just getting to his spots and getting it done. And outside of basketball, I mean, he is the leader, and guys follow him. And I think he's starting to recognize that, and he's using that to a positive now for our program. And he's kind of the dad of our program in a way. He's taking all these younger guys under his wing, and he's kind of bringing them with him because he's super vocal, and he's the one communicating on the court and in every timeout. And he is a very fun player to coach.
You can see that reliability because of what he did down the stretch in that Central Noble game at the free throw line and whatnot. Coach, you came into this past week after a decent performance in the Match Play Invitational. Obviously, the outcome didn't go quite your way against a very good Garrett team under Logan Trailer, but still only lost by 8 points to a Garrett team that's only lost a couple games this year, and they're having one of the best seasons in all of Northeast Indiana. It still beat John Glenn in the consolation game. And then this past week, you had a big lead against Churubusco. Late in the game, got a little close for maybe what you would have liked, but still got the win no less against Churubusco, a scrappy Busco team. And then Friday against Central Noble, you were down as many as 10 points, I believe, in that game in the first quarter. Down 8 points start the second quarter, 7-point spree in about a minute to take the lead that you would never relinquish, and your team was successful from there. Coach, we talking about the Central Noble game. Where did you see that click from the first quarter to the second quarter that propelled to your team be able to get to victory lane?
Well, what Central Noble does defensively, it's very tricky, and they try and keep you on one side of the floor, and they split the floor in half, and they're coming hard help to the corners, and it's really hard to simulate a defense that you never work on your own. And we tried to simulate it in practice, but until you actually see it and go against it, it takes a second to adjust to that stuff. And we went through a ton of our offensive stuff, and nothing was working there in the first quarter. And we decided to go to our zone, basically our zone offenses against it. And if we ended up having some success, we had 23-point quarter in the second quarter, and we started skipping it. We started making the extra pass. We started finding ways to drive without getting charges. And our kids did an incredible job making those adjustments offensively to help us have that 23-point second quarter. And I felt like we controlled the rest of the game. I really did.
Yeah. Especially towards the very end of the game where free throws were right on the line. It seemed like you definitely had control of the game the rest of the way after that slow start. Coach, you looked at the rest of the month of January. That Central game is one of only 2 games that you're going to be on the road for that month. After that, it's just home games. And you got Westview on Tuesday, Huntington North on Friday, Snyder on the 14th. You're going to Cal on the 17th, which is going to start a string of 4 conference in a span of 5 games, which Lakeland's only to be sandwiched in between those 4 conference games that I'm alluding to here. But going back to this week, Westview and Huntington North, Westview is going to be a really tough team to defend. They shoot the ball extremely well, led by Danny Yoder, and also Slayball is just a credible all-around player. And then they got Huntington North. I mentioned earlier, Huntington North with Ethan Zahn, the leading scorer in the conference, and then Titus Schultz having a nice career year for the Vikings. They're coming off a conference win against Leo before Christmas break. What are things that stand out to you about these 2 teams as you prepare for this week?
Well, we'll start with Westview. I think Coach Chandler Preble is probably one of, if not the best coaches in our area. I mean, he does such a great job with that program, and they just play so hard. And offensively, they do a lot of different actions that make you defend a lot of different stuff. And like you said, those 2 guys are rolling. The Yoder kid is playing really well. He's kind of been blossoming this year, and Austin is Austin. I mean, I truly believe he's one of the best guards in the NECC, if not the best. I mean, he is really good, and it goes around him. We got to find ways to limit his touches, along with the Grau kid, who also does some really nice things for him. The good thing about them and the tough thing that it is to guard them is they have 5 guys that can do lots of different skills, and we're just going to have to find ways. We're going to break down all their actions tomorrow at practice and make sure we're ready for Tuesday. And then Friday, Huntington North, always well coached, great program, and their defense is probably the strength of theirs. They try and keep you out of the lane, and they make things really tough. So we have a lot to prepare for this week against 2 really well-coached, solid programs. So we have our hands full, but excited for the challenge.
Mm-hmm. And looking at, and you talked about the strength of the challenge with the coaching and whatnot, and Huntington North's just one of those teams. But looking at the NE8, last year the NE8 was as wild as we've ever seen in this conference, where it felt like every team in this conference had a chance to win it. And maybe this year isn't quite that same level this year. Well, a couple of teams are not quite as good. I'm talking like Bellmont, for instance, lost a lot from last year, but the NE8, it still feels like all these teams are very much can win any night. And you look at Columbia City, a team you lost to earlier in the season. Huntington North, you're going to be playing this week. You got Leo coming up later this month. Norwell's always a contender with the McBrides. And then you got New Haven also under Brandon Appleton, and they're very tough as well. Coach, as you look ahead to the game, to the meat of the conference, what are some things that you liked about this team that gives you some hope about what you could do in the conference and what you do for the rest of the season? And then what are some things you still want to clean up as you get to the halfway mark of the season?
Well, honestly, Sam, I mean, you said it. We want to focus on ourselves. That's the biggest thing, especially with a ton of young players in the lineup still. We want to focus on ourselves and getting ourselves better every single day. And just we're trying to get really good at a couple things. And right now our focus is our man-to-man defense. We had some breakdowns early Friday in that Central Noble game, and then I felt like the rest of the way we did really nice job defensively. So just trying to get really good defensively right now, and then trying to find an identity offensively. And that's going to change as guys get healthy and back and our lineup changes a little bit. And that's kind of been the challenge coaching with this team is trying to find our offensive identity. And I think this week we found Nathan Boker is going to be a huge part of that. Kobe Ritchie still needs to be a huge part of that. So right now that's our identity. And we are going to try and clean that up a little bit and just make sure it looks more crisp as we get into these next few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is Coach Brandon Durnell, the East Noble Knights. They are currently 4-5, 3-game winning streak as a tough stretch of games, including home games against Westview and Huntington North this week at the Big Blue Pit. Coach, one final question from me. I believe this is your fourth year at East Noble now. You have seen a lot of learning over these 4 years, and now you have some of your AAU connections as well, and now with Logan Traylor being the coach at Garrett, and so now you have connections there. Brandon, in your time so far as a high school coach, where have you learned the most during this time at East Noble?
Well, it's harder than it looks. And I think any coach you talk to would say that. I know there's a lot of people that think they can do it, and it's just really challenging. There's a lot that goes with it. There's youth feeder system. There's the organization of team meals and boosters and fundraising, and there's building relationships with other coaches at the school. There's getting into the community and making an impact. There's so much more than just the X's and O's of basketball. And I feel like, it was a challenge at first, and I'm getting a little more comfortable every single year at what we do. And I feel as confident as ever as this is a program on the move, and we want to keep working at it. I feel like my assistants, I got to give a ton of credit to them. Josh Trish, obviously a huge part of that, who very well, I'm sure. And Josh Deming has been my right-hand man when it comes with youth and community. Tyler Gross is a community guy. Brandon Nichols is one of the better East Noble players to ever play there. He's been great with our freshmen. And so I feel confident in where we're going and what we're doing. Still need to get a little bit more buy-in. But it's something we're working at, and we feel as good as ever. This is going to work.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to be pretty excited to see what East Noble is going to look like when we start seeing a healthier team on the floor that's going to have some experience with the younger guys as well as the leaders with this East Noble team. Coach, any final thoughts before we let you go?
Well, just again, I want to shout out the other players I didn't get to shout out. A couple of our other returners. Alex Phillips was one that was a role player for us on varsity last year. I feel like he's starting to finally get back into rhythm as well. We're going to need him down the stretch this season to play some huge role minutes for us. And then obviously Kobe Ritchie, he is a beast, and he is so unorthodox. He's undersized, but he just finds a way to get it done. And it's crazy the things he does. And when he is locked in, we are a different team. And so we will rely on him as long as Boker and our other seniors, Landon Swagger's coming back this week. We're super excited to see him back in the lineup. He's an experienced guy for us with some length who can shoot it and can play make. And then surprisingly, Riker Quake's a few weeks away, and that's going to be a huge difference maker for us.
Oh yeah, that will definitely be a big boost for your team as well. Coach, thank you for taking time to talk about the East Noble Knights, and congrats on your recent success as of late for your team, and good luck the rest of the way.
Thank you, Sam.
I'm here with the head girls basketball coach of the Fairfield Falcons, Kyle Hartman. Coach, good morning on this Monday, January 6th. How are things going for you and your Fairfield team?
Morning, Sam. First off, just thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being flexible with the time too. I know it's early, but yeah, things are going well for us. It feels like we haven't played in forever. We finally play tomorrow at home against Garrett, so we are definitely looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Tomorrow will be your first game since December the 20th, which that was a 50-34 win over Elkhart Christian. Also your first home game since the 13th. So when you take on the Garrett Railroaders, coach, last season it was as successful of a first year as you could have possibly imagined for you as a head coach.
where your team won the conference regular season championship. You played for the conference tournament championship, and then you also played for the sectional championship. Coach, when you look at what happened last year to this year, just talk about the things that kind of went with this team, and just talk about some of the things that maybe this team has improved since that first year.
Yeah, well, I think the big thing is like we've all gotten pretty comfortable with each other. The first year, I was new to the girls were new to me, and kind of learning each other, and expectations and all that stuff has been really easy the second year around. I mean, we all know what to expect, and with most of our team back this year, so I think leadership has improved a lot. I think both offensively and defensively that we're on the same page more this year than we were last year, and I think that just goes back to the getting comfortable with one another. My style of coaching, their style of play, trying to making sure that that all is aligned. But yeah, I think overall, I think the um, being with one another more and more over the summer and into the season now that we should be starting to click here pretty soon. So I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm. And this is one of the better rebounding teams in this area, and obviously one of the better defensive teams in Northern Indiana, as we saw last year, and then this year, probably even more so this year. Coach, we talked a lot about Eva Herbert, and she has become one of the better two-way players on this Fairfield team, a player that's going to shoot the ball well, but she defends at a high rate. Madison Jones has become maybe the top big in the NECC this year. I think she's averaging 14 points per game coming into this week, and she's having a nice year for your Fairfield team. Talk about what these two players bring to this team, and then maybe talk about some of the other Fairfield players that maybe we don't talk enough about. I know we talked about Michaela Mass a little bit, especially before the her injury, but who are some other players that maybe have also stepped up for your team this year?
Yeah, so obviously Ava and Jones, they do a lot for us. We do a rebound belt and every game, and then we do a deflection or slash steal chain for every game, and those two are up there most every game for us to maybe receive those awards. So yeah, for them to be defensively on top of our zone with their length and athleticism and quickness, it's great for us. And then offensively, Ava is continuing to do her thing, and then Jones has really stepped up offensively for us. She worked really hard in the off season, improving her offensive game, taking it off the dribble a little bit more, being more confident with herself, and hitting the open jump shot as well. But then, like you said, we have a lot of other girls that have stepped up in big games. Macy Worthman and Hattie Herbert both have been stepping up, hitting big shots when we need them to. They don't shoot a lot, but when they do, it's a high percentage. And so those two are great with all the hustle plays and rebounding. But then, yeah, Michaela, so she had a concussion, and she's working her way back in right now. Still kind of day to day. So getting her comfortable back into the offense will be important for us for the second stretch of the season. But we had Paige Park, who is a freshman, and she filled in great for us. She's got some height, some athleticism, and she can affect the game in a couple of different ways by just being athletic. She is kind of one of those kids that's always in the right spot at the right time. Works really hard. She listens. It's been great for her to get this experience early on. So then when Michaela comes back, we're even a little bit stronger then too. So.
Mm-hmm. And with this Fairfield team, obviously you're going to play a very tough schedule because of what this type of program is. I mean, you look at the schedule. You beat Elkhart to open the season. You played John Glenn, one team you lost by 23 points early in the year. You played Wawasee, a big rival for your school. Just dominated Goshen. Lost to a very good Northridge team. Looking down the schedule, a 54-50 overtime win over Angola. I mean, that's 2 years in a row that you've beat Angola in overtime, and then
yeah,
and then you had a nice win against Fremont. just a couple weeks ago, 37-31 on the road. Coach, I want to kind of go back to that Angola game because the Hornets have always, for some reason, the Hornets kind of giving your team some trouble those past couple years, and with their height and their wingspan and whatnot. What are some things that stand out to you about that game against Angola that you could probably learn for the rest of the season?
Yeah, handling pressure because of their length. They kind of make the game a little bit chaotic with their with their defense, whether that's man-to-man switching, or if that's their 1-3-1, their little 2-2-1 or 1-2-2 that they do. And again, with that is rebounding, with all that height and um, athleticism. So I think we've learned a lot from being able to handle the basketball, rebounding the basketball, and then honestly, it's great for us because of playing in tight games, close situations. It puts a lot of pressure on our girls, and for the Angola for the past 2 years, we've handled that well. I think both times we've hit big free throws in those games, and it's a great learning experience for us. But yes, the past 2 years against Angola has been very, very fun games. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of transitions to what we're going to talk about next year. Is so this week, and actually for the next 2 weeks, you're just so really in the next couple of weeks you're going to be playing NECC competition. So this week you're hosting Garrett. That's we just alluded to earlier on that one. Tomorrow, that should be an interesting matchup considering how tough Garrett can be defensively and what they can do with their zone and their pressure. And then you got a big matchup on Friday at Eastside for the NECC game of the week. They have been the top team in the conference all season long. They have only lost one game this year, which was against Bellmont on Friday. So Eastside has seen some tough defense going into this matchup against the Fairfield Falcons. This is a team that you lost to in the conference tournament championship game last year as well. Coach, you can talk about Garrett or Eastside however you wish, but talk about what stands out to you about these two opponents as you prepare for next week's NECC tournament.
Yeah. Again, similar to last year, we had to go to Garrett after this kind of a long break we had, and you could definitely see that we hadn't played in a while. Garrett, they do a really good job of mixing up their defenses and applying a lot of pressure for us, and we struggled with that last year, and so we've been focusing on that, handling pressure, trying to make the girls in a stay ready type of mode during this break, because when we come back, we have a big stretch of games coming up for us. So yeah, tomorrow will be another tough game. They got some big girls on the inside, and they got some freshman guard that's pretty solid with the basketball. So I'm excited for that game. I'm excited to play again. It's been a long week of practice, in a good way, obviously, but I'm ready to play somebody. Friday, though, like you said, it's a big game again. Eastside's really, really good again. They got the sophomores now, the two sophomores now that played a little bit last year, that they've improved a lot over the summer, and all five can shoot threes, and they got girls off the bench now that can hit shots and defend. So it's gonna be a huge battle for us. It's gonna be a huge test for us. But I'm excited to play again.
To kind of add on to that East Side game, and East Side's going to press, and they're going to press really hard on you. So turnovers are going to be something to keep an eye on. What happens with the free throws, obviously, I think it's going to matter here, and whether or not you can be able to get some transition scoring, I think are going to be a big factor here. Coach, that this East Side team also has some length as well. Lily Prescher is back in her senior year. Taylor Mack, one of those two sophomores you mentioned too, she's got a little bit of height as well. And in the guard play of Sydney Kessler and Paige Tratzler gives this team a little bit of a headache for you to prepare for. Is there anything else with Eastside that stands out to you?
I mean, overall, their opponents and all the games they've played, I mean, their opponents average, 25 turnovers, don't shoot the ball very well from the free throw line, just because of the amount of pressure that they apply. Most of the game, East Side, they get almost 30 points in transition, and those come off those turnovers. So if we can limit our turnovers and keep them out of transition, get from getting easy buckets. I think we'll be in a better spot. But taking care of the ball and rebounding is going to be huge for us.
Yeah, and from covering this team the last couple of years, if you can also hold off their shooters, I think that's also going to be a massive key, because when Eastside gets hot from three, they are unstoppable with that press. So that's going to be another thing to watch.
Sorry, they got, all 5 of them, like I said, can all shoot the three. I think 4 of them are all shooting in to mid 30% from three, which is really, really tough to guard. So it's gonna, like I said, it's definitely gonna be a challenge for us.
Mm-hmm. This is Kyle Hartman, the head girls basketball coach of the Fairfield Falcons, as they resume play tomorrow night against Garrett before playing the Eastside Blazers just about a week before the start of the NECC tournament. Coach, kind of my last question here as we approach the stretch of the season for your team. After the NECC tournament, you're only going to have 5 games left, which is going to include a 3-game road trip to Central Noble, Westview, and Bethany Christian, followed by Northwood and West Noble. As you get ready for the conference tournament and then later on the sectional, what are things that you have? You probably said something about what you've liked so far, but what are some things that maybe your team can still clean up or improve on to be best prepared for a very difficult section, which your school is going to be hosting this year?
Yeah. It's crazy. They, from yesterday, it's, I don't know what, 2-3 weeks they draw for sectionals. So this season has just absolutely flown by, it seems like. But yeah, we got to shore up our turnovers. That's for sure. If we keep low turnovers, we can be in most games. Kind of got to get healthy again. We kind of went through this last year with some other injuries, and we're in a better spot now than we were last year with the injury bug. But got to get healthy going into this week, into next, and we got to shore up some defensive things of giving teams just one-shot rebounds, using our length, always being active on the defensive end, no matter what. If our shots are falling or not, we still got to stay active and in our defensive pressure, our mindset. So, it's gonna hit us fast, and it's gonna be a tough stretch going in, but it's a challenge for us that we're excited for and we're ready for. And the sectional is going to be, like I said, really tough again with Northwood again, and Wallasey's got everybody back, and now then you add Columbia City in there. It's with Baxter. That's another battle in itself. So it's going to be tough again, but yeah, we're very grateful that we host it this year. It should be an awesome environment for all the teams in there. We're excited to host, and can't wait for the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. It will definitely be one of the harder sectionals once we get to with your team, and then Columbia City with how tough their defense is. So I think this East game is going to be a nice test for what you can see in the playoffs. Northwood with their height, but Kyle, you went to a SAC school, so tough competition should not be a stranger to you whatsoever. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We I remember going into sectionals, with almost a 500 record or a losing record, and then my last 2 years in high school, we went to semi-state, and we were at a little bit above 500 or something like that. So the SEC was a very tough conference to play in,
but it rewarded you in the playoffs as well. But Coach, any final thoughts before we let you go?
Nope. Again, just thanks for having me on, and all that you do for girls basketball and really all the sports around here. I know you're a busy man, and you put a lot of work into it. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you. This is Kyle Hartman, the head girls basketball coach of the Fairfield Falcons. We want to wish him and the Lady Falcons best of luck as they resume play tomorrow night against the Garrett Railroaders in Benton before making the long drive to Butler on Friday for the NECC game of the week. Coach, thank you for taking your time, and good luck the rest of the way.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the ANEC Sports Podcast. We'd like to thank all of our guests for coming on to talk about their seasons, and particularly with Nick Kraus of Garrett Wrestling, as this is a very busy time for the wrestling folks. Girls wrestling is now in the state series, as they call it, and the boys just found out about their state tournament draws. So this Saturday is going to be a very busy day for the boys, especially those that are participating in the state tournament. For the teams, particularly with Garrett, Adams Central, Bellmont, South Adams, East Side, those are the teams, New Haven, those are the teams that are competing in the state tournament for the teams in the classified tournaments, 1A, 2A, and 3A, respectively, throughout our coverage of ANEC Sports. Obviously, there's 4A, but we don't have any 4A teams in our area for wrestling, so that's just how things go with that. But until next time, please tune in next week for another episode of the ANEC Sports Podcast, which will be our 20th episode of this podcast. And hopefully we will be able to add some more wrestling content as things go and whatnot. But we are getting close to the stretch of this winter season for wrestling and for basketball. And we look forward to the next wave of games and events to follow. So until next time, this is Sam Fritz saying so long. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you for watching the ANEC Sports Podcast. Please like this video and like the page ANEC Sports on YouTube. Let people know that the ANEC Sports is on YouTube. Also like our Facebook page at Around the Northeast Corner and follow either Around the Northeast Corner and Sam Frick on Twitter/X. We're also on Instagram as well. Just look for ANEC Sports or Around the Northeast Corner and you will find us there. You can also follow the man himself, Sam Frick, the founder and editor at Around the Northeast Corner, for other additional content. This has been an Around the Northeast Corner presentation.